February the 13th, 2019. Happy Valentine's Eve. Guys, this is a global warming video, and I want to talk about how warm it is in Hawaii. This is a snowstorm hit. On Monday, a historic winter storm pounded Hawaii with hurricane-force winds, massive waves, and snow in some unusual places. Maui was blanketed in snow at altitudes as low as 6,200 feet, the lowest snowfall since 1952 at the 2,023-foot summit of Maui's Halelika volcano. Many world-class telescopes were frozen solid. Here's an image from it, guys. And, of course, I was being facetious when I said it's a global warming video. You know, when I think about it, one of the things on my bucket list would be to testify in Washington with Trump or with the Senate or Congress and show them what I'm showing you now, and I'm going to show you a chart here in just a moment, and explain how easy it is to prove global warming is a fake carbon tax, carbon credit scheme whipped up by the Democrats. Check this out, guys. These telescopes are frozen. They can't use them. What were we looking at a few months ago? Volcanoes. Listen, what's going on? You've got grand solar minimum. Now, when you have that, you've got summer and winter effects. In the spring and summer, in a cool day, because the shields are weak, because that's how it works when you don't have a real good solar stream continuous from the sun, you don't have solar flares, coronal mass ejections, filament releases. The shields are weak. And so on a cool day in the spring, you can get sunburn worse than you ever have in your life. You'll see crop damage, things like that. And in the upper elevations like we're seeing now, because the shields are weak, the upper elevations in the wintertime, and as we have Arctic vortex dips that are out of control because the vortex is out of control, because the Earth's dynamo is very weak. Again, grand solar minimum. But when we see this, the upper elevations, the northern hemisphere, will be both extreme in the winter and extreme in the summer. More extreme not only just in temperature, but guys, you remember for the last 2 or 3 springs, we've talked about these extreme sunburns at 65 degrees. The shields are weak. Again, I would love to present this and this chart I want you to look at. Remember, they haven't had a snowfall this low in elevation since 1952. They don't talk about how extreme it was. It was not this extreme. And this chart would be the first thing in the presentations. And this is not our information, guys. It's NASA, NOAA, all put together. But notice right here, 1958. You're starting to go into a peak in the largest solar cycle that we've had. We're going into 25, 24, 23. That was solar cycle 19, averages 11.8 years. Again, matches the orbit of the sun's binary twin, the gas giant, Jupiter. Ancients call Nibiru. Anyway, that was during the dip. Notice right here, that's 58. 52 would have been 6 years before that. That's about halfway through the solar minimums. So during that dip was the last time that they had anything like this, snow even at 6,200 feet. But look what happened right after that. Look at this peak in sunspot activity. You can see to the left, it says sunspot numbers. And that's how they measure these, the strength of each solar cycle. But notice since 1958, at that peak, it's gone downhill. You had a drop here, and sometimes it can be, depending on data, it was dropping, and then you get more satellites up, more information about the solar flares, things like that, solar wind speed, and you get more information. But look at the overall average. Now we're ending solar cycle 24, going into 2019, and starting to possibly rise into solar cycle 25. It will start out weak. Now, your blue line is the forecast from different, it's called the ensemble forecast for sunspot 25, and the red is the simulated predicted sunspot cycle. There's no black line there because we have not observed the sunspots yet. And guys, we know that there's a scientific push of global warming. How does that affect these predicted ensembles here when this thing looks like it probably could go as low as it was in the 1800s when we saw the modern minimum? Again, it would be easy to discuss this. My point is, as we look at this, guys, prepare for extremities in both seasons, okay? More hurricanes, more spring storms, more extreme winters, more extreme summers, because it's climate chaos. It's not global warming, and the chaos is a natural progression in the solar cycles. It's called the grand solar minimum that we're going into now. When we saw this before, in the modern minimum, in some of the other cooling periods, we saw it increase volcanic and earthquake activity. It's recorded, if you remember, and some of the ice. They drill down, they get these ice tubes up, and you can look at the different layers of what was happening in the environment. During these grand solar minimums, there was heavy ash content. The same reason we saw Kilauea and many other volcanoes explode this year, because that energy that's being pushed into our weakened shields is transferred into the core of our planet. But again, guys, this is what we're dealing with. Think about it and be prepared for that. Be prepared in the north for worse than what we saw this year. And even though you're going to see a rise, look at the end of the chart. You see it every time. We're going to rise up more than likely less than either of these two lines. I would put it somewhere about half of solar cycle 24. Because if you go back to the solar cycles in the 1800s, we are very close to that, and it was lower than this. That is more than likely what we're going to see. But that will give us a break on the weakened shields. They will not rise to the strength that we've seen before if you look back. So you're going to have, I think, less extreme heat in the summer, but more sunburn, more crop damage because of the penetration of the gamma radiation and the solar radiation. You're going to have these extreme Arctic vortex dips in the winter. Prepare for that. Start thinking about it, guys. But we're watching it. It's a heads up. Be safe.